Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, and today I'm in London. And as London is preparing for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and the Trooping of the Colour, the city is abuzz with the regiments practicing, flags being flown, and the entire country preparing to celebrate this incredible milestone of the Queen. I thought it'd be fun today to check in with our good friend Tom Chamberlain, ceremonial guru whenever it comes to all things British, to learn more about exactly what the Trooping of the Colour is, its tailoring tradition, and its significance today. So join me on another Gentleman's Day Out.
So here we are at the Guards Museum, and I know that museums aren't necessarily all sort of where you frequent for these videos, but I thought it gives a good bit of background for what we're going to be looking at. So here we are.
I mean, whenever it comes to ceremony, nobody does it better than the British.
Yeah.
And so much of that originates from military history and tradition. That all is coming to a culmination here with Trooping of the Colour. So it's a nice lesson for me that you're kind of walking me through all of this.
I'd sort of be able to show it to you. I mean, the thing is that if you know, your ethos is quality, craftsmanship, and tradition, and I think that no institution epitomizes this better than the Guards regiments. And as you can see sort of around you, there's a lot of sort of key pieces of uniforms, some of which are extremely iconic, so the bearskins, for example. And as you see behind you, with the sort of dramatic reenactment of battle, you can see that these were fighting uniforms at one point, obviously no longer. So why do the Guards exist? Well, they refer to themselves as, or at least the Grenadier Guards, as twice the man. What that means is that they currently have a green job and a red job. So the green job is obviously modern day soldiering in the field and stuff, but the red job is about the ceremonial guards to the Queen or the monarch, and that is a special duty that they have as Guards regiments. And so each of these regiments have been they've been around for different amounts of time. So the oldest is the Grenadier Guards, and so they are referred to as the senior infantry regiment in the British Army as a result. And they are all distinguished in different ways. So obviously they have their cap badges, and you have the Grenadier Guards with the exploding grenade, and you have the Coldstream Guards with the Garter Star, the Thistle with the Scots Guards, the Cloverleaf with the Irish Guards, and you have the Leek with the Welsh Guards. All of which obviously very sort of sentimental and appropriate to the nation. And it's such a wonderful thing, I think, and I think it's great that we'll get to come here, because what you see on the parade ground at Trooping the Colour is basically just a kind of a culmination of hundreds and hundreds of years of tradition and excellence and the application of excellence to soldiers on the ceremonial ground. And I think that people might say that ceremonial is sort of pointless for modern soldiers, but actually there's going to be a lot of people who were in the Guards who would argue the opposite, and I would too.
Now, how many different regiments are there of the Guards? Household Guards?
So there are 5. Okay. So there's the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards, the Scots Guards, Irish Guards, and Welsh Guards. Okay. And you can actually, interestingly enough, with the uniforms, when you watch Trooping the Colour, you'll be able to differentiate who they are, not just by the cap badges, but also by the button stances. So this is an interesting kind of tailoring part of it. So you see here with the Grenadier Guards, the buttons are straight. The Coldstream Guards, it goes in 2s. Okay. With the Scots Guards, it's in 3s. With the Irish Guards, it's in 4s. And with the Welsh Guards, it's in 5s. So groupings of 5, whether it's on the cuff and on the front of the jacket as well.
And what's the origination of that? I mean, is the history of it just purely to differentiate the various regiments of the Guards?
Yes, basically. I mean, that's the idea. And also, you see things like on the bearskins, they have different coloured plumes on the side. And the bearskins are obviously extremely iconic, but were necessary in battle. They had a practical application in battle, because you might have noticed that Guards, they wear it underneath their lip. They don't wear it underneath their chin. And the reason being is that in battle, with a charging horse coming at you, it firstly, because it's over your eyes, it kind of puts off the perspective for anything charging. It doesn't really know what they're hitting. And if they hit the bare skin, the idea is that the bare skin would just fly off and you can keep fighting. But if it was under the chin, obviously, it would probably take your whole head off. So, these are, historic fighting garments, but play obviously an iconic ceremonial role today.
Yeah. What about the origination of the red? I mean, does it have anything to do with just kind of the blood of battle?
That is the urban myth, but it is an urban myth. It is actually just because red is sort of the most straightforward material to create. I mean, what it's made out. I mean, it's made out of wool, but the dye in the red was the most straightforward to do. So that's why it is that. It's very smart. So we're lucky that happens to be the colour. Because if it was like, I don't
green
know, orange or something, it might just be slightly different. But no, red, and this is summer kit though, because in the winter they go grey.
Historically, I mean, of course, the regimental guards, just like all of the regiments, of which there are more than 5 in the British Army.
Much more than 5 in the British Army, and also in the Household Division, I should also add that there are also the mounted troops. So there's the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals, who make up the Household Cavalry. And part of the troop in the colour you'll see is the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, who draw wonderful guns that were actually shot at the Battle of the Somme.
Yeah, and so they would have been tasked with really protecting the Queen, right?
Yeah, so
traditionally
they would have been the elite troops, and their role would to have the sort of closest proximity to the
Queen or King, the sovereign.
Yeah, absolutely, the monarch, and provide a sort of a domestic guard at the royal palaces, which they still do today.
Yeah, fascinating.
So sort of delve a bit deeper into the museum.
Yeah.
And there's this over here, which I'm quite pleased to show you. Because while, as I was saying, us Brits and your native America are great friends now, undefeatable allies, 'twas not ever thus. And there is a belt buckle from the Coldstream Guards, which was found in New York City. They were sort of digging around underground, they found it. So obviously it comes from the time when
those tumultuous few decades.
Yes, exactly. The time we shall not speak of anymore. But yeah, so obviously around the 1770s, when we were having
there were a lot of occupying troops from the British Army.
We had a habit of stomping around. So this is from then, and it is now returned to the museum, and I guess just kind of is a nice little indicator of a bit of history.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, if you look back in some of these historic paintings, right? You look at the uniforms. Traditionally, just how brilliant and beautiful all of the officers' uniforms were. I mean, they would have been, in New York, assigned to duty in a foreign war, right? But still in ceremonial uniform much of the time. They would have been dressed in these uniforms, beautifully adorned.
Yes, and I think that us Brits have a reputation of being slightly eccentric in that sort of manner, and we don't. Half measures avail us nothing. We go full on, and I think that when you look at sort of the portraits around as well, this is really what people wore. But also, rank is obviously a very important thing in military structure, and so it's important to be able to notice who goes up the ladder,
what the pecking order is.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why it's more like when you get sort of up to general level, and you sort of we'll see something called an aguilette, which is a really smart thing. It's a kind of rope, it's a kind of gold braid rope that is worn on the right shoulder if there's a royal appointment, and on the left shoulder if it's just at a very specific rank or position within each regiment. Or the army as a whole. And the purpose of these was supposedly because they've got spikes, gold spikes in the end, and the point was that in the old days you would charge the guns and then ram it into the gun and then break it off. So the gun would be switched off, and then you would ride on and get more Russians or something. And
so disabled the gun.
It disabled the gun, and you move on. But it was the honour of the officers to be able to do that. But they had their aguillettes to sort of be able to do that. But as you see here, also. The Keppel children, this is from the 1700s as well. The traditions of the regiments go way, 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 way back. And I heard a story once of an American groundsman at Harvard visited Cambridge University, and he saw the lawns there, and he said to the groundsman in Cambridge, he said, how do you get your lawns to be so amazing? And the groundsman just said, oh, it's fine, we just roll it and roll it and roll it. He goes, well, we do that too. And he goes, yeah, for 400 years. That's right. And I think it's fairly similar with how I think the regiments now view themselves and how they refine their ceremonial codes, values, and also excellence. And
yeah. Well, if you look at the uniforms, and I mean, again, it's, this is of course a historic uniform, right? You look at the evolution of this to where we are now, right? I mean, that's happened over hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And so you look at the uniforms, and they're just absolute, extravagance, as an American, looking at just how rich they are and how detailed they are, and everything that goes into them. Well, that has had 400 years to evolve, and it continues to accumulate to where it is now, which is, really at the highest level. Amazing.
I think what's really important to note also is that this museum is largely here because it carries a huge amount of tradition of not only the stuff that kings and generals did, but also bravery of regular soldiers and young officers. And every time someone puts on the uniform, they kind of carry that soul with them. And we'll talk about the colour a bit later as an embodiment of the regiment's soul. But in the meantime, this is interesting because this is the Duke of Wellington's uniform.
Oh, wow.
Who obviously, a great man, Duke of Wellington, wonderful man. There's a lock of his hair in there as well because we all need that. And the Duke of Wellington, there's amazing things with the Duke of Wellington. There's a letter I've read from him in the Cavalry and Guards Club where he complains about the lack of morale, and he attributes it to the lack of strawberry jam. That's in there, which I quite agree with. I think we all need more strawberry jam.
If you're going to be on the battlefield,
so
you need your English tea, which is still standard issue.
Absolutely,
in the
absolutely. Well, the thing you had to, so he wrote back to Parliament to say, now look here, we need more jam.
Yeah.
So great man.
My brother was a naval aviator, and he always enjoyed, whenever he was, kind of attached to a Royal Navy aircraft carrier, because they're still allowed to drink.
Yes.
Whereas on the American aircraft carriers, there's absolutely no alcohol. So it was always a little bit of a treat whenever they were attached to the British military, because there were a few additional, privileges that they were allowed to enjoy.
Yeah, we still roll the dice a bit on safety. That's brilliant. Yeah. So this little thicker section is like a nice little homage to this. He's got this beautiful pair of pumps, which is, considering how slight he was, he's, it's not, as everyone was tiny, though, quite big feet, and his effect across the British Army. I mean, there was, the regiment's named after him, and he's still a really revered and respected character, and of course that kind of touches very much on the Household Division too.
Yeah. And he was a part of the Household Division. Which regiment?
So this one, he's a colonel of the Grenadiers. Now, the colonel of the regiment is an interesting role because when you're a colonel, a full colonel, you're past the regimental level. So that's what always, because nowadays you'll find colonels of Guards regiments tend to be royals. So he was that. So as you can see with that, you can see that he was a very much respected and admired character because a role that is usually taken up by a royal was taken up by him.
Yeah. Well, he was, given Apsley House, #1 London.
Good spot.
The country was very much, not indebted, but they were very grateful for his service in the Battle of Waterloo. Because things could have turned out quite differently for the world
very
had
much
he not persevered
and
triumphed.
No, quite. And the Peninsula Campaign, the whole history of his sort of service and his kind of his brilliance and his tactical mind. It's still a legendary thing, and the army look up to it very much.
Yeah.
Now onward. So controversial to some, but to anyone interested in the sartorial arts, a great legend, a great man. This is Edward VIII's uniform. Now, I think this was actually from when he was Prince of Wales, but as you can see, what I was talking about with the Duke of Wellington, he's wearing the colonel's rank on his shoulders, the crown and 2 pips. Here are his amazing boots. They're
beautiful.
Yeah.
So these are riding boots.
Yes.
I wonder who made them. Can you see?
Did it say Peel?
Peel.
Yeah. There you go. Amazing.
The famous Peel.
Yeah, absolutely. And here are the aglets I was talking about that you'd stuff into the guns, and
he would have been over, of course, all of the regiments.
Yes. The thing is, it depends on the timing of his growing up. Because if he was Prince of Wales, he would have taken on the Welsh Guards colonelship, because that tends to be what happens when you're Prince of Wales. But as king, yes, of course, you're commander-in-chief of the entire army. But some regiments will get the sort of special honour of having the sovereign be the colonel-in-chief of their regiment. So if this is when he was king, then it was the Welsh Guards who got that. But I believe he kind of switched and changed around. So as you can see, some of the buttons are very different. Actually, yeah, if you look closely, there's Welsh Guards, that is Irish, no, that's Scots Guards, Irish Guards there. So yeah, so he obviously changed the buttons a lot to meet the needs of the regimental life and the visits that he would have done, because the royal family traditionally take great interest in military goings on. And
he had a lot of responsibility in that regard, ceremonially.
Yes, and actually, I mean, the Duke of Edinburgh was well known for being somebody who would, go into not just the officers' messes, but to go and meet the troops and talk to them and understand what their needs were. And I've heard plenty of stories from soldiers who have had interactions with the Duke of Edinburgh, because he genuinely cared. And I think it's a really important part of the link between the sovereign and the royal family and the military.
Yeah, that's great. Look at this. I mean, this is, what, a little bit over 100 years old? Just about.
Yeah.
I mean, the boots are absolutely beautiful, perfect condition, great shine.
They go 1915.
1915, yeah. So just a little bit over. This has been such fun.
Great
Where
treat.
to next?
So this is just an interesting thing I wanted to show you, because we've talked a lot about officers at the moment and so forth, but this is the kind of Hall of Fame for what's referred to as the Garrison Sergeant Major. It's a kind of unique position. These guys are absolutely essential to all ceremonial duties within London District. So they're in charge, basically. The badge you see down here, they refer to it as Big Badge, because it's big. It's enormous. But the tradition and the stereotype of the British Sergeant Major is alive and well, mainly because of these guys, because they're the ones who the drill experts. They know absolutely everything about drill and ceremonial, and are going to be key to this image down here, which is of trooping the colour. They coordinate the whole thing with the brigade major and what's referred to as the field officer in brigade waiting, which is the guy who commands the actual parade. But without the garrison sergeant majors, you're not going far.
Yeah, interesting.
I would say we should now go to Horse Guards Parade and check it out.
Yeah, and that's where this would be.
That's where this is. This is where the parade will be on the Jubilee.
Yeah, exciting. Well, shall we?
Let's do it.
Well, we just barely missed them coming in, but here they are.
Looking as impressive as ever. It's a great honour to be inside Wellington Barracks while this is going on, because you can see the crowds are all outside, and the lads look amazing. They're marching in step. It all looked pretty gleaming and really lovely to see. It's always very, very impressive. It never gets old.
The pageantry is absolutely incredible.
Well, they train really hard for it. I mean, that's the thing. This isn't just walking. I mean, they do train very, very hard for it, and there's a huge amount of discipline, a huge amount of teamwork involved. Yeah. And these guys do it, but then
the amount of marching that's involved is quite extensive. I mean, it's all the way down the mall. Yeah. Right between where we're going, the horse guards. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then here, right.
And the mass band, who are tip top.
And so what they're practicing for right now is, in fact, the trooping of the colour at the Platinum Jubilee.
Exactly, that's exactly right. And so all this practice is for the big day when the Queen will be on parade, and they'll be marching past and doing their own little dedication to the Queen herself.
And the trooping of the colour, I mean, is this the most important kind of ceremony? Military kind of parade of the year?
It's the biggest state ceremony of the year, that's absolutely for sure. And it's the Queen's birthday parade, so it's been going on since the 1700s. But the actual traditions that are going to be going on that we'll talk about on Horse Guards goes back way before that. This idea of trooping a colour, it's an odd terminology, but we will be explaining it later on. But it is a very important day for the Queen, and a very important day for the country, and a lot of people come and watch it and stand on the mall and give a wave at the balcony. It's a nice flyover from the Royal Air Force. Yeah, it's all a big day.
I'm just sick with envy. I'm not going to be here, but how great to be able to capture at least a little bit.
It's a rare thing, but it's a wonderful thing. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I mean, how brilliant. Yeah.
Cool. Onward. So here we are on Horse Guards Parade. From where we stand, this is a very impressive parade square, and
It's quite large.
It's huge,
Yeah.
and well, there will be a lot of soldiers on it. But what's interesting is that you're seeing the back of a lot of buildings that you will have heard of. For example, that is the back of 10 Downing Street.
Really? Okay.
Yep. And so that is the back of Scotland House. And you can see actually over there, there's the red flag of the British Army sticking up over there. Not the Royal Army, I should say. It's called the British Army.
British
because
Army.
regiments are royal. With the RAF, the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy, the whole thing, but regiments are considered royal or not. But the British Army is the British Army, so that's by the by. But the MOD is there. Now the MOD is positioned on top of Henry VIII's old Palace of Whitehall.
Really?
And Whitehall is the large street that runs across all of this. And so underneath is still Henry VIII's wine cellar.
Really?
If you can get to it.
Next time, Tom.
Next time, you're going to get an access to the MOD. But this is where everything will be going on.
Okay.
But this is in theory a kind of a British expression of its power across the world, which is when this was built at the height of the British Empire.
Yeah.
You can see right up there all the insignia of government and ultimately of the crown, because the government is here to represent the crown's interests.
Yeah.
And are loyal to the Queen, who will obviously be the big boss on parade.
And where is Buckingham Palace?
So Buckingham Palace is all the way over there. So what we have St James's Park, which is absolutely beautiful. I would really suggest you walking around it, because for me it's one of the great royal parks.
Yeah.
So Buckingham Palace is straight down there, flanked by two roads. So there's the Mall, which we've spoken about, which is the sort of famous street. And then on the left-hand side is Birdcage Walk, which is the one that runs alongside Wellington Barracks.
Which is where we just were.
And that all meets at the top by Buckingham Palace and the Victoria Memorial.
Okay, great.
And then our patch is over there. So Mayfair's over there. And yeah, so this is the sort of, this is the kind of epicenter. This is the beating heart.
So this is where Trooping of the Colour all happens, right here.
Yes, exactly. So this is absolutely where it all goes on. Obviously, there are other parts in Buckingham Palace and the Mall and stuff, but this is really where it happens. But those are just three words. I do kind of need to go into detail of exactly what happens on the day. So here we are on Horse Guards Parade. As you can see, we have plenty of room to play with, and but this is the site where the Trooping the Colour ceremony will be. I was here, very fortunately, in 2019. I was sitting up there, just beneath the plane tree. I don't suffer from hay.
What a view!
Yes. But it
Yes.
was a perfect view of absolutely everything. But as you can see, the whole thing is set up for a rather grand occasion. It's the most extraordinary state ceremonial event, and you're very lucky if you get a ticket to the.
Well, there's not that many. I mean, all things considered, it's not very many seats.
But also remember, every sort of military dignitary, it's a big foreign office operation. Because
I can imagine.
You need to be quite careful with that kind of thing. So there are two things to really think about. There's the why. And then the kind of what, as in what's going to happen on the day. So in terms of the why, 1748 was the first year that they held what's referred to as the Sovereign's Birthday Parade, and otherwise known as Trooping the Colour. The actual sort of practice of trooping a colour predates that quite a bit, but in terms of actually making it the sort of the military doffing of the cap to the sovereign for their birthday, that's when it started. So really what the point of Trooping the Colour is it's about battle. So in battle, where it gets very smoky and very loud and very difficult, the colour represented a rallying point at times for the regiments and also
and the colour being the flags.
The colour is basically a large embroidered flag that has all the battle honours for the regiment on it. It's a very important thing nowadays. It's not used today, but it's brought with the regiments to operational theatre, so it goes outside regiment stuff, and it has the battle honours embroidered onto it. So it's a very special thing. It's seen as the kind of soul of the regiment, and it's certainly troopers and guardsmen and officers, they're all trained to hold it in very high regard and great respect. So when you had the honour of trooping it in front of the Queen, that's a whole new thing. And so the point of it really is, as I say, in the midst of battle, it would be paraded through the troops so they could all get a good look at it and they could know what their rallying point looks like, if needs be. But that's obviously not, that's not relevant today.
Yeah.
Today it's a ceremonial expression of the household division's excellence in drill and ceremonial, their discipline, their teamwork, and also their respect and admiration for Queen Elizabeth. And I think there isn't going to be a more pertinent or special time to display that than on the Planalto Jubilee, because that's 70 years. You think 70 years, it's
tremendous milestone.
I know, it's amazing. And the Queen's had, there's a great history of the Queen with trooping the colour. She got shot at in the 80s by a chap, just over there, right on the corner.
Yeah.
She was on her horse, I believe it was Burmese.
Yeah.
And she was calm as a cucumber.
She's a master horseman.
She was absolutely amazing. She rides side saddle, but she kept the horse calm, gave it a little pat, and just continued the rest of the parade. Very difficult thing to do, I think, under the circumstances, because you can understand if you're head of state to somewhere like Britain, you might get shot at. So other than that, she doesn't go on horses anymore.
Yeah. So now the big carriage?
She can take it by carriage, and she gets taken over there where she goes right in the middle, and the troops march past her in slow time and in quick time. And then behind the guardsmen, you have the household cavalry, and they'll be all set up on the horses behind, and also King Street Royal Horse Artillery, who will parade past, as I say, at a sort of slow time and then quick time, the horse version.
Fascinating. So they slow down to parade past the Queen, and then.
Yeah, the style of marching. So slow marching is just one time marching. It's much more elegant. It's much more controlled. It's just using the legs, not using the arms. Quick marching is probably the kind of archetypal marching that you will know about. And so they go around twice. They eyes right past the Queen as their little salute. And then that's more or less, in a nutshell, how it works. We also have the mass band here. Now the mass band are they are fighting troops. These are not sort of renter fiddlers, or renter tuba. They're genuine fighting soldiers, part of the British Army, and trained both extremely hard with their instruments and then also with as fighting troops. So they will be on parade. They're an amazing band. It's quite. We heard them earlier. At the band. It's quite something being that really close to them.
I love a good march.
Who doesn't? And so that's kind of a summary of where we're at the moment.
Okay. And so where are we right now in the actual parade route? Where does it begin? Where does this lie within that progression? And then does it end back at Buckingham Palace?
So wherever is in Horse Guards Parade, where we stand right now?
Well, I mean, just an overview of the overall parade route.
Right. So this is a absolute. This is sort of where everything kind of takes place. This is the most important part of it. So you have Horse Guards Parade here. As you can see, just over here is the Mall. The Mall is 1,160 paces long, which is important only because the army tend to march at 116 paces a minute. So the idea is that the Mall should take exactly 10 minutes to march down. And it's also, it should say that will notice when we go on to the Mall's red, and the reason the Mall is red is it's sort of an oxidized iron process that basically is meant to resemble a red carpet. So up the Mall is going to be crowds on both sides, plus other guardsmen who are not part of the parade, who are posted. Who are just marking the Mall. And then there's the Victoria Memorial in the middle, where the troops are marched around, and then there's Buckingham Palace. Now, Buckingham Palace, obviously, the nation's home of the Queen, and where she will be coming out of with members of the royal family and senior members of the British Army, and they will be on horseback, riding up the Mall to the parade here. So they'll come up here. They will take their positions up by the stand that will be over there. Then the Queen will inspect the troops. So the Queen will get back on her carriage and she will go and inspect the troops. She has a very keen eye. She's done this for a very, very long time.
70 years.
And yes, and
Plus some,
there are of course reports and stories of her being quite keen-eyed on certain details that people need to reflect on after a parade. So everyone wants to avoid that because everyone wants to impress the Queen.
Yes.
So she then takes her place back up at her seat, and then the parade starts in Rio, it starts with the mass bands who do a march, and
so the regiment's waiting for her to arrive. So they're stationed here because we were just at what was it, Wellington Barracks, right? And so that's where they're practicing, but that's where they would stage, right? And then they would march here, be all set out, right?
Yeah.
The Queen would arrive, inspect them,
Yeah.
and then the actual march is in effect beginning here back to Buckingham Palace.
That's exactly right. So they will all be formed up here well in advance of the arrival of the Queen. Both the guardsmen and also the field officer and brigade waiting and the mass bands. So they'll be here waiting to give the words of command. There's some quite nifty drill movements to open up the space for the royal family to arrive in through. Then that gets closed up here, and then it starts in actuality. And so we'll have the escort for the colour will be on the right-hand side. Now, traditionally, the right-hand side of any formation of British Army is a grenadier company. Okay. Which is why, regardless of the regiment, whether they're Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards, Irish Guards, Welsh Guards, Scots Guards, they will march it's a Grenadiers March that they march to come along here, and then they march to the middle there where there will be their colour waiting for them. Okay. And the regimental sergeant major will take the colour, pass it over to the ensign. The ensign tends to be the youngest subaltern, the youngest officer of the regiment at that given time. It's a great honour to be because he will flourish the colour, and I'll come to that in a bit. The escort then becomes the escort to the colour because it now has possession of the colour. It will then, in slow time, follow the route of the troops, which is a sort of L shape along here. And that's the ceremony. That's then the colour is trooped, and then the march bys happen.
Yeah, wow. And so the Queen, traditionally on horseback or now in the carriage, would process with the troops to Buckingham Palace.
Yes.
Right? They would go up to the balcony, of course, which we've all seen on television. And then I guess there's a flyover? Right?
Yeah, that's
the
basically
troops continue to march past?
Yeah, so she'll go by. She'll have the household cavalry nice and close to her because they're her bodyguard, and also in front of her, lots and lots of guardsmen, nice bearskins marching perfectly in time to the mass band's music, and all the way up the Mall. A couple of minutes wait for her to kind of shake off the plane trees and maybe the dust, and say a big thank you to the field officer and brigade waiting, who probably did a terrific job, as the great Colonel Piers Ashfield did in 2019.
Yes, 2019.
He did a wonderful job. And then she'll come out on the balcony and everybody waves and wishes her a happy birthday.
Yes. God, brilliant.
It's a great thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, the tradition is second to none. I mean, I think that it's been going on for hundreds of years. Yeah. Right? And still at its same level of excellence. Yeah. That's so much of what I love about Britain. Is that, these traditions have gone uninterrupted for such a long time. They're still honored, they're still respected. Yeah. In many ways, they're still cherished. And so it's so much of British culture that it's great to see them continue on strongly.
Absolutely, I think you hit the nail on the head there, in the fact that it's part of the culture, it's part of the sort of soul of our kind of our way. It's who we are, and it's a big part of that, just that, because yes, it's kind of eccentric. And yes, it's antiquated. I mean, it has, it has no
military purpose, really, outside of ceremony.
Outside of ceremony, but I mean, well, I will say that they would argue that obviously the discipline and self-administration and teamwork required to pull off something like this does pay off in the field. Yeah. But in theory, you know what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. And So yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's quite unusual, I think, to the rest of the world. I've seen all over YouTube. I've seen people who are doing sort of reaction videos to and they have no clue, and why would they?
Yeah.
Because it does feel unusual, and yet at the same time, when I watch it, it couldn't be more British. It couldn't be something that's so much a part of who I am as a person, and who every kind of Brit is too.
Is there anything else you look forward to as much as this? I mean, this is, kind of a penultimate military and certainly kind of royal ceremony, right?
Yeah.
That's involved with the Queen. Anything else on this level that you think?
Good question. I mean, this is certainly the biggest of them. If you want to see any more sort of state pageantry of that sense, is the opening of Parliament.
Yes, which just occurred.
Prince
Charles was standing in for the Queen.
Yes, so he did brilliantly. But
a pair of boots that got you on Girling refurbished.
That was very clever. I thought that was bloody good. I thought they did an amazing job with that. But we obviously hope that it doesn't indicate anything too bad with regards to the Queen. Yes, but that comes and goes fairly quickly as a if you want to see everyone out on the
and with that, I mean, you see the Queen, or in this case Charles, processing in carriage from Buckingham Palace to Parliament.
Yes,
right. But then, aside from that, everyth's really behind closed doors.
More or less.
The rest of it, I mean, you can see it on television.
I mean, you could see changing the guard, of course, if you
that occurs weekly.
I think it's 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
So it's that's over at Buckingham Palace, but there's the ceremony of the keys at the Tower of London, which is a really interesting one because that's proper ancient. Okay. That's like very old. The ceremony of the keys. That's
medieval.
Yes. No, way before that. I mean, the ceremony of the keys is very old. And also the change of guard happens here as well. There's actually every day there's a 4 o'clock inspection.
Okay.
So at 3:30 you'll see a young subaltern on a horseback from the lifeguards of the Blues and Royals, looking very impressive, trotting over, and he'll inspect the troops who are going to be guarding there. Because in theory, this gate here is the official entrance to Buckingham Palace and St James's Palace.
Okay.
So we're currently in Buckingham Palace in theory.
So this would have been, the original entrance where people would have come in to Buckingham Palace.
Yes,
right.
That's it. So that's where that's why the guards are there. One time, Queen Victoria came back and there was no guard on duty.
Really?
So she punished them to 100 years of daily inspection. The 100 years have obviously since elapsed, but they've kept with it to keep the tradition going.
Because back then, I mean, you really did have to worry of something happening. I was. Well,
lots of people tried to kill Queen Victoria. Everyone was after Queen Victoria. So many people tried to kill her.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
But just the carriage ride. I mean, someone was telling me the carriage ride from, like St James's Palace to Kensington Palace. I mean, you were in the proper country and you had to worry about
bandits
and
bandits.
I mean, which seems so absurd. But that's why they would have these caravans of carriages that would kind of all caravan down together, and it was to for their own self-protection.
Yep, absolutely.
I love Britain.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Tom,
aren't we lucky?
Thank you so much. I've learned so much on this tour, and we get to see the household guards practicing. Here we are, at Horse Guards, and congratulations, I guess, for the Queen's.
Nice day for it. Hopefully the weather sticks something like this. You don't want everybody fainting.
Well, you remembered your umbrella, which is
I did.
Why we didn't have rain. I forgot.
This is my. Funny enough, all of this is my sort of homage to kind of guardsman off-duty dress, because there was a time where if you were a young guards officer, you were expected to wear a sort of double-breasted sort of navy suit, pinstripe perhaps, and you walk around with a bowler hat and umbrella. My bowler hat is not around, but I do have this is my brig umbrella, and the kind of notch in here, so you can see it's 2 separated pieces of wood. The whole point with that was so the kind of young guards officers can have a very, very tightly furled umbrella that kind of substituted as a sword, if you will, as they walked around.
Look extra smart.
And look extra smart. And they did. They look absolutely gleaming. So if you see a picture of Prince Philip at Ascot or wherever with an umbrella, he's got one of these with the separated handle from the rest of the stick.
Yeah.
Delightful to be here, Kirby.
Well,
Thank you for asking me.
thank you so much. We're going to have to do this again. Maybe
and
some
again
of these
and
other
again.
ceremonies. Every single time I'm with you, I learned so much about London.
Oh, good.
Unfortunately, I'm sad that I won't be here personally for the Trooping of the Colour, but I will be watching.
Good, excellent. Quite right.
This time informed.
I expect you to. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you.